All right. This is the spa guy. Finally get to meet the spa guy. I have to tell you my spa guy story, spa guy.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going through YouTube,
Yeah.
okay? And I come across in my AI, kind of up on, my page. I see spa guy,
Yeah.
Elvis something,
Yeah.
something. I'm there, what the hell is
What is that?
this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so I'm there. Okay, it seems so odd that I said, okay, I'll bite. I'll see what it is.
Yeah.
I was so impressed. I was so fascinated. And
Cool.
the archaeology, the forensics you've done on Elvis over the years is just unbelievable. There have been things you have discovered that, all through Elvis's career and life and post death, nobody's been able to find out.
Well, I have been fortunate,
Oh,
and I'm a fan, and as a fan, I've said this before in videos. The way this all came about is as a fan. I'm 56 years old, so I was 12 years old in '77 when he passed away. So once he passed away, I was a fan. Elvis was always a household name to me
okay.
as a kid.
Well,
I knew exactly who Elvis was.
you were
In my
born.
mind, it was "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." That was, a Jailhouse Rock. You knew this. He was iconic in my household
Like,
because I had a musical family, so I knew exactly who Elvis was.
okay.
All my whole life.
Okay.
It was a thing.
Okay.
As a kid, we imitated Elvis.
Yeah,
You ain't
okay.
nothing but,
Now
so that was a thing.
you were born here in Tennessee,
Now, I
right?
was born in North Carolina. I'm from North
Okay,
Carolina
okay, okay.
And so he was always just part of the fabric of America. To
Okay,
me.
okay.
Part of the fabric of music.
Okay.
So in '76, I had a friend, a neighbor, Troy Robinson, and I'm getting ready to do a video about Troy. Sadly, he's passed away. But Troy was a neighbor, and he invited me to come to his house. And his dad owned a jewelry company. They owned Robinson Jewelers in Greenville, North Carolina. And so I was always impressed that they owned this company. They owned this jewelry company.
Right.
So I thought, well, I get to go to this guy's house and be friends with him. So I remember going in his bedroom, and he had these. I'm gonna set my coffee down. He had these records. I remember it was about that wide. It was albums stacked up side to side to side on a corner like a bookcase.
Right.
And I looked at those albums and I thought, what is that? And he said, those are records. They're Elvis records. And I went, Elvis records? He said, yeah, I collect Elvis records. So he got some of the records out and started playing me songs and stuff. And he said, I tell you, I'll sell you this cassette for $1. So I bought Aloha from Hawaii on cassette from Troy Robinson.
Oh, don't tell me what you're going to tell me.
And so I went home and popped that thing in. You remember back the tape players were this big, the cassette player. And
I remember.
And I went home and we lived in a trailer. I lived like a block and a half from Troy's house. And I remember going home and
press play.
And I laid on that thing and laid it in my bed and just listened to it night and day and fell in love with the music and went, wow, this is something,
Spa guy, I must tell you,
Yeah.
Aloha was my introduction to. And once you hear it, there's no stopping.
It's
you just go.
Magic, man.
You just go.
And so during that time, there wasn't a lot of Elvis stuff. You go in the store and there wasn't a lot of records around.
We could talk.
But after he died, there was magazines, there was stuff.
Because RCA released all this stuff that they'd been holding back.
Right.
So,
I started buying those magazines and reading them and buying books. And I did my ninth grade book report on the, I can't remember the name of the book, but I could see it.
Elvis, What Happened?
No,
Albert Goldman. Elvis.
This would have been a real thin paperback book that was sold through the school. Scholastic.
I have no idea.
And you could order it.
Okay.
And I saw it and went, I've got to have that. So that was my first.
Okay.
And I still have the book.
Hey.
I did my ninth grade book report on that book.
Very cool.
So I did that. And so my education with Elvis was the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
All these
same
magazines.
Same here.
Because every convenience store you went in had these Elvis magazines.
Right, right,
So I learned about Ginger and Linda and
right,
all of these different characters in the story.
right.
And I romanticized the story, and it
Hmm.
became something that I just loved the whole story. The
Yeah,
Memphis Mafia, and you
yeah.
got all these different
Right,
people and all these
right.
different facets to the story. So, but that was all you had. There was no internet. You had to learn your stories
Right.
from reading books and looking at the
Yeah,
magazines.
and so many books and magazines were failing in what the truth was.
Oh,
You know what
absolutely.
I mean, I mean, whatever it was. I
That's
mean,
exactly right.
the Albert Goldman book, or
Yeah.
I mean,
But you read them and you wonder about the stuff. So what I did was I started getting the stories in my head. And I met Scotty Moore and became friends with Scotty, read Scotty's book.
fantastic
And
episodes.
so what I did was you have these visions of what the story was.
What?
But to make the story really come to life, you had to um, imagine what it was like when Elvis went to Scotty's house and auditioned for him to the apartment.
Fantastic.
So I wanted to see what that apartment looked
Right,
like.
right,
So
right.
what I started doing was seeking these places out. And I came to Graceland the first time, 1988, and you probably know the story. I borrowed a camera from someone and jumped the fence and went through the barns and stuff in Graceland and took
Was it
photographs and all that
open?
kind of stuff. Yeah, it was open 1988. Yeah.
Okay.
But I jumped the
And
fence,
why did you do that?
because I wanted to see that
Oh,
stuff. You know, I had
you couldn't pay a
romanticized that
ticket,
stuff
and
to the point. Well, I did that too, but I wanted to go on the tour that nobody got.
right. I hear you.
So I
Okay.
jumped the fence and took photographs.
Very
of it,
funny.
And I've got a video, and I'll show you some
Very
photographs I took.
funny.
And I filmed things that weekend. I didn't take a film camera across the fence, but I
Right.
took a still camera across
Right.
the fence, and got caught and held in the guard shack for a period of time.
Yeah.
They didn't call the cops or anything. They were
Okay.
very nice.
Yeah.
But I did do that
That's
because
very
I
funny.
wanted to know so much about the story, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
see.
I
I know
wanted
what
to
you said.
submerge
Yeah,
myself in actually seeing the real stuff.
Yeah. And that's what you do in your episodes. You really, like, you get to the real thing,
Well, yeah.
and it may take some detective work, but you do the groundwork, you do the reading work, and you match, you show your viewers the reality.
Yeah, well, I want
You
to
know?
bring the story to life, and I
Yeah,
started going
yeah.
there and saying, "This is what it looked like then.
Yeah.
This is what it looked like now. This is what happened here."
It's
I think
very
that helps.
cool.
And look,
Very
I'm not
cool.
100% perfect in all of my videos. I'm gonna be honest, because you think you know something, and then you find out later, well, that's not true because
Yeah.
you read it in a book.
Oh,
So
see.
there's a lot of that stuff. I know a lot more now than I knew in the beginning, and there's things that I've said in videos that are not accurate.
Okay.
But I try to fix that in another video and go, hey, I said this, but this
Now,
is.
let me ask you this. And this was one of the big ones for me. You talk about myth and
Yeah.
creating the world in
Yeah.
your head.
There's a lot of this.
Yeah. My Happiness was not recorded by Elvis for his mother.
No, that is not accurate at all.
I lived with that for
you know,
years. I grew up with that.
Well, the story is this: a lowly truck driver walked into Sun Studios and recorded a record for his mother. That's the scenario. That's what everybody
That's what
knows the
everybody
story.
grew up on. Yeah.
Okay, so he was not a truck driver. Okay, that's not factual. It was never Sun Studios ever.
Oh,
It was Memphis Recording Service.
Oh, before Sun. Was
It
Sam
was Sun
Phillips?
Records. It was never Sun Studios.
Okay,
It was
but
Memphis
okay,
Recording
all right,
Service
okay,
and Sun Records.
Right.
The reason it's Sun Studios
okay,
is Shelby Singleton owns Sun Records.
okay,
He owns the name Sun Records.
okay,
So they went Sun Studios so they could say it
okay.
and not step
all
on
right,
the
okay,
copyright.
yeah,
You see
okay,
what I'm saying?
right.
So,
I know.
So that's
okay,
very technical.
Yeah,
that's
very
accurate.
technical.
Okay, so. And the other thing is Gladys never heard that record.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
the story.
That is so funny.
Ed Leak gave him the money
Oh,
to
my.
record that. He took that record to Ed Leak's house. And I later heard the story. I never got to talk to Ed Leak. Sadly, he passed away. But I had a friend that knew Ed Leak
Yeah.
that did talk to Ed Leak
Yeah.
about the story. And what he said Ed told him was that he said when Elvis came to Ed's house, he walked in the house and Ed and his mother were sitting in the living room. They were such good friends that he had knocked on the door. He opened the door and went in the house,
Yeah,
sat in the
yeah.
living room, and said, "Well, I've done it." He said, "You did what?" He said, "Well, I finally got up the nerve and went and recorded.
Yeah, yeah.
I recorded the record." He said, "Well, where is it?"
Yeah.
He said, "I left it out front in the planter." He'd left it outside
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the planter
yeah,
out
yeah.
in the front of the
Yeah.
house. So he said, "Well, go get it." He went out there, and then they played that record in his house. He said that Ed told him that they put the record on. Him and his mother and Elvis listened to it, and they said, "Man, that sounds great." And Elvis said, "Nah, it's not great," and left it there.
Okay.
And then years later, Ed Link passed away. Ed never sold it,
Yeah.
but he did show it to people.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, the family found it in the safe
Yeah.
and sold it, and now
Right.
it belongs
Yeah.
to Jack White from the White
Yeah. Right.
Stripes.
Now,
And
now,
it's in the Country Music Hall
he,
of Fame or Jack White
yeah. Did he
Museum.
basically want to hear his voice
I
on a
think he wanted
recording?
to
Is
get
it
it over
simply?
with. Let's get it done. And he wasn't satisfied with it, so he never wanted anybody to hear it.
So what was the point of recording
I think
it?
I think he wanted to get over that hump, get that done, and move on. And
What do you
when he
mean?
heard it, he didn't like his voice. I don't like to hear
Oh,
myself
he didn't like
sing.
his
I
voice.
don't think he did. I don't like to hear myself sing. You know, I have an album out. I've recorded an album.
But
and
have
I-
you heard
and I
Elvis's
hate it.
voice?
Yeah, but I mean, it was recorded on a record cut, and it's not great. It's it's okay. It's still Elvis. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
But
But I think we're all oftentimes our own worst critics. So
yeah.
he wanted it to be better than it was, so he
Okay.
left it there. And at the time, they didn't own a record player.
Was he going to give it to his mother?
I don't think so.
Okay,
because
yeah.
because it was supposed to be for his mother's birthday.
Yeah.
And his mother's birthday was in
Yeah, that's you said that.
June.
Yeah, you said that in the video.
This in July or August.
Yeah,
so it just doesn't add up.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
the narrative comes from Sam Phillips. Sam was really good at creating narratives, and I think that was his narrative.
I see.
This truck driver,
Yeah,
his
right,
mother,
right.
a record for his mother. So I
Right,
think
right.
he's the one that put that narrative out there,
I see.
which took and became.
Oh
a
my!
myth.
It became
the
gospel.
average Elvis fan, the average person that is just a casual Elvis fan, if you ask them, they would tell you that story. They know.
Right.
that story.
That's my story.
That's
I
right.
grew up with it.
But it is
you know.
not factual.
Yeah, yeah. And see, that's what I like about your episodes is that you show the reality of Elvis's the Elvis story, and it's so well done, and it's
I appreciate that.
it's so studied and learned. And
I'm getting better. I've learned a lot more. So we're
very
getting
impressive.
better. And now we're finding things that you don't even know are lost, like the ambulance. Who knew the ambulance even existed?
I'll tell you, the first time I heard that, I'll be honest with you, Spa Guy, I'm there, prove it.
Yeah.
And I think it was the next video you put out, you proved it.
Yeah. When we got it, I had to trust, and I'll be honest, there's an element of doubt in me too.
Yeah.
But they had paperwork.
You got to have the province of
that it was the Elvis ambulance.
Right.
And he bought it under that pretense. Now, the guy that bought it sadly had passed away. I was dealing with his widow and the family. But according to the provenance that I had, it was the Elvis ambulance.
Yeah.
So then I put the video out. Somebody shows it to Bill Edelman, which is the curator of the Memphis Fire Museum that's worked in the fire department since 1977.
I see.
That was familiar with it. What happened was Bill watched the video, put something on the museum website about the video and said, "Hey, I took this picture in 1991."
Right.
So he had a photograph of it in 1991 before it was sold at auction, and it matches that unit.
Yeah.
So then I contacted Bill when I saw the photograph and said, "Hey, would you like to come?" So he came, nicely came here, backed up the provenance of it, and explained the details of the provenance, the details of the F-479 on the unit.
And you shot that as a video too, to the fans, to prove to them this.
2018. That was way back.
Yeah.
What are you finding? Oh, okay. What are they finding out there? And I'm sorry, I know you're
no problem.
Yeah, I need to talk to you. You need to know this.
Film it.
Let's see. Now, how did you begin on YouTube?
All right.
You began as Spa Guy?
Yes, I started making YouTube videos in 2009. I own a hot tub company in Nashville, which is
Yeah.
called the Spa Guy.
Yeah, and I've seen some of those episodes.
Yes. And I
And
started my company in 2005. So it took 4 years. What happened is I went out and worked on hot tubs. It was me by myself in a pickup truck. And I started the company and started I found out that nobody wants to work on hot tubs. I grew up in the swimming pool business. My dad's a pool builder.
I see.
So I grew up kind of in that business. He didn't really do hot tubs, but it's a similar business.
Right.
But I worked in the car business for the first, from 18 to 35, I was in the car business.
Okay.
I worked as service manager at a Ford dealership.
All right.
And I moved to Nashville in 1999, the end of 99, when I was 35 years old, to pursue country music, singing. And I sing and play in bands.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
And so I'm a musician. And when I came to town, I started a company, automotive related company, with another company in Nashville and pursued that. So I basically tried to make a living.
Yeah,
So
well, you got to eat.
I didn't get a chance to, I wasn't willing. I had a wife and 2 children, so I was never willing to. There's a lot of musicians that sacrificed everything for music.
No.
I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I had to be a responsible person. Right. And so I couldn't sacrifice everything for my wife and my kids. So I always had a job. I was always doing something. So I never really got to pursue music, really, because I was busy trying to make a living.
Right.
That's being honest.
Okay.
Although I played some music, I played. I traveled. I got an album out. I traveled and opened for a Christian. I put out a Christian album.
Oh,
and I traveled and opened for a Christian country band called Jackson Heights. And a lot of those guys are from or lived in my hometown in North Carolina. So I knew those guys, even though most of them live in Nashville now.
Okay.
But some of them still live in Kinston, North Carolina. And so I traveled. I was their opening act. So I would get on the bus and travel with them and open for them and support my album. When the Elvis stuff started going, when the YouTube stuff started going, and I'm getting a little bit ahead, but I'll go back.
Okay.
I had to kind of back up off of that a little bit because I couldn't do both. The video started kind of overtaking, so I had to back up. So let's go back to 1999. So when I opened the company, I started fixing hot tubs on my own, and the company just blew up. I ended up working 15-hour days, 6 days a week. I had so much business, I literally could not do it all.
Good for you.
So I bought a van. I moved to the van. I had a little Ranger pickup truck. I hired somebody to put them in the Ranger. So then we got so busy, I bought another van, put them in the van, hired somebody to put them in the Ranger. We just kept going until I had a fleet of trucks.
Right.
And so then I started selling hot tubs. So I thought, well, that's a good medium. YouTube would be a good medium. I'll put the videos on YouTube, kind of like a used car salesman. I got this hot tub for sale. I would make those videos. If you go back, they're still on YouTube and from 1999. So I had that, and then I started doing how-to videos. So I put those on there, and I started selling hot tub parts online on eBay and Amazon and my own website, which is Hot Tub Parts of America. I own American Spa Parts, Hot Tub Parts of America, Nashville Spa Covers. I have a lot of different, internet companies now, all hot tub parts related type stuff. And we've been very, very, very successful. I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed that, the Lord lines those things up. And that's allowed me to be able to do something like this.
I was about to say, who runs the company? Because you always seem to be out of the office.
Yeah, David Gould has really stepped up, and also a young man named Logan Robinson. Logan's brother is a country music star. His name is Dylan Scott. He's signed with Curb Records. They're on tour right now with Luke Bryan. And Logan, because of COVID, they weren't playing. So Logan is his brother's guitar player. If you look at videos, it's a long-haired guy with a really, really good guitar player, really good singer. And they go out. So now they're back out on the road. But during the meantime, Logan really helped fill in while I was gone.
I see.
And so you'll see Logan. If you go and look up Luke Bryan or Dylan Scott, you'll see Logan playing. If you watch this video and you see Logan, tell him that you heard about him on there, because he was an integral part of this. It was important. Those two guys really stepped up and made it possible for me to be here.
Now, let me ask you also personally, what about the wife?
Well, that's
You
a
know,
good
I mean,
that's a good question.
what's the difference between doing this and touring
Well,
if you live in
not a
Nashville?
lot of difference. So originally, when Pat and I talked about doing this project together, we had enough money we paid cash for this building. It's
Mhm.
paid for, and we had enough money to do the build out on this.
Mhm.
And our plan was not for me and him to physically do the build out on
Right.
this. Well, you know what happened with COVID?
Yeah.
Suddenly,
Yeah.
everybody's busy,
Yeah.
or nobody's working. It's
Right.
one of
Right.
those two
Yeah.
scenarios.
Right.
Or if they're going to come work, the money was just crazy
Yeah.
tight,
Yeah. Yeah.
So we found ourselves in here looking around, going. I finally looked at Pat one day and said, "Look, if we're going to do this, me and you're going to have to do this."
Oh,
And
okay.
I have, I'm fortunate to have a background in. I'm not a. I was taught from my dad that if our washing machine broke, we just fixed our washing machine. We didn't
Right.
call
Right.
somebody.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
our car
Right.
broke, we
Right. Right.
called somebody, and that's how I got the
That's
car
exactly.
done.
Yeah.
I lied to a guy and told him I was a mechanic, and I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started working at a car dealership. In 3 months, I was the lead
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
technician. I just have an aptitude
Yeah.
for being able to fix things
Father was the same
or
way.
build things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for some reason, I just have these
Yeah.
skills to do
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't have any training in it. I
Yeah.
just know how
Yeah.
to do stuff.
Yeah.
So Pat said, "Well, man, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff." I said, "You don't need to. You just, if you're here to help me, hand me stuff.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get this done."
Yeah.
So me and him started tearing walls out
Yeah.
and
I saw
restoring
the
stuff
episode.
and doing all
Yeah.
that. You saw
Yeah.
the episode.
Yeah.
So he and I did pretty much probably 90% of this,
Yeah. Yeah.
including these drop ceilings and building these walls and all this
So,
stuff.
are you home most of the time in Nashville, or do you commute?
I stayed here 5 days a week for about 6 months. So what I
Okay.
would do is come here and stay.
Okay.
And
But that's no longer the case, is it?
well, I'm still here about 5 days a week
Oh,
right
you
now
are? Okay.
because
Okay.
up until Elvis week, I'll be here
Right.
that long.
Okay.
After
Okay.
Elvis week, I'm gonna try to go back to my normal life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe come here a couple times a month or something
Yeah.
like that. But until we're trying to get this thing off the ground,
Right.
so we're all
Right.
trying to be here.
Now, I
supporting.
saw your lineup for Elvis Week,
Yeah,
and I must say it's quite impressive.
yeah. We've
And
got
and now let me ask you this: how did you get Dave Hebler?
well, Dave Hebler was here doing karate. He's in those videos.
I know he was a
So-
very close. He was part of. He was part of one of the guys.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
he was Elvis'
What did he
bodyguard.
do after? I haven't seen him on any of the talk shows or the forums or the
Yeah, I mean, he's done a handful of
interviews.
things,
Or
and I think Dave is 82 now,
is he?
but he seems to be in good health.
Yeah.
And man, he's really, really sharp. If you hear him talk, he is very learned, man.
Yeah.
You can tell by hearing him talk, he's educated.
Yeah.
And Dave was here doing John Daly's event. So John Daly always does an Elvis Con event here.
I see.
He's been doing that. You've seen him in the videos.
Yeah,
I attend that event.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to step on John's stuff.
Yeah.
But we're going to be open later.
Yeah.
John usually is closed at 6. So Dave will be at John's event during the day. And then he's going to come here and do an event for us at night.
Very
So
nice.
he'll just be there signing autographs
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And then we have Ron Strauss, the co-pilot of the Lisa Marie. I'm friends with Ron, but Ron's also doing John's event.
Great episode.
And
too.
I'm friends with Dean Nicopolis. And a lot of people don't know that Dean is, a lot of people just go, well, that's Dr. Nick's son. How does he play into this? Well, he's actually a lot bigger role than Dr. Nick's son. Dean taught Elvis how to play racquetball.
Oh, he did.
If it wasn't for Dean Nicopolis, Elvis wouldn't play racquetball.
Yeah.
Dr. Nick thought that Elvis is like me. He didn't like to exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So teaching him how to play racquetball and getting him interested in that was a way to get him to exercise.
I see. Yeah.
So Dean was 15 years old when he started teaching Elvis how to play racquetball. Okay. When he turned 18, Elvis asked him to come to work for him, and he actually went on tour.
Yeah.
Dean stayed with Elvis. When you were a valet, there was 4 valets. There was Al Strada, Dean, Ricky, and David Stanley.
Yeah.
And they would do 12-hour shifts or 24 hours. They would work shifts. Well, Dean and Elvis were good enough friends. I think Elvis almost saw Dean as a son.
Yeah.
And they were tight enough that they spent a lot of time together, where if it would have been, and I may be speaking a little bit out of school here, but I'm pretty accurate in what I'm going to say, I feel like. That like David and Ricky wouldn't have been Dean and Elvis would sit in Lisa Marie's bedroom and watch TV and eat supper and hang out and talk and
Right,
sit in
right,
Elvis's
right.
room. Where if it was David or Ricky, they would only come when Elvis needed them.
Right,
Other than that,
right,
they
yeah,
would be
yeah.
playing pool or whatever.
Right, right.
But Dean and Elvis were like that, and
Yeah.
that's a fact.
Very
In
cool.
fact, the day that Elvis passed away, Dean had taken 3 days off on vacation because he knew, you know, the tour was coming up and
Yeah.
he wanted a little time. So he had taken 3 days off, or he would have probably been there. And maybe that would have changed the outcome.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know,
Yeah,
we don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But the day that the way he found out Elvis passed away was he was at Southland Mall buying a piece of exercise equipment that they were going to take on tour for
I
Elvis to
see.
exercise
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
and he heard it over the intercom
Yeah, yeah.
and rushed back to
Yeah,
the house.
yeah.
And that's how he found out about that. And
Okay, so let me digress again.
okay,
To get back to the Spa Guy channel,
okay,
it started out with the spas. It started out with
Yes.
your business,
yes.
and then where'd the turn go?
Okay,
When
so
the
for
turn come?
years, that was 2009. So I had a following. I was getting a lot of views. I had about 3,500 subscribers. And so I can remember when I got 100 subscribers. I was like, wow, I'm on to something,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And so I got to about 3,500 subscribers, and I wanted to do more. I had explored doing a reality TV show about the Spa Guy, about us doing repos and
Oh, right,
installing tubs, because I like a challenge. So if you go back, you can find videos of me putting hot tubs on crazy places by hand. Instead of hiring a crane,
Yeah,
I'll figure out how to put it on a 16-foot hot tub by hand,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Because I enjoy the challenge
Right,
of that kind of stuff, and I
right.
think it makes a great video.
right, right.
So I would do things for that purpose, you know, which is probably a little bit crazy, probably a lot crazy. But I would try different things, and I even tried different videos because I love history. And for me, for Elvis, and I think for most hardcore Elvis fans, if you're either on the Elvis train or you're off the Elvis train, you can't dabble in Elvis.
No.
You're either completely in it or you're completely out. So for years, I was out of the Elvis thing. I didn't really read the books or watch
Yeah,
the
you
movies.
did some history. I see you
Yeah.
were over in Belle Meade at one time
Yeah.
and did a thing about the train wreck there,
Yeah,
about the golf course.
It was the most deadly train crash in the United
Yeah,
States.
yeah, I saw that
I just
episode.
tried things.
Very cool.
You know, so I would
Yeah.
try different episodes, different things that I thought were interesting.
Yeah,
And they somewhat caught on. You know, I have a second channel that has 12,000 subscribers, and I'll get 2,000 views on a video. I still make videos for that channel.
yeah.
Because it's things I'm interested in,
Okay.
but I don't have the same results that I have from the Elvis stuff.
Yeah.
So what happened is, I'm going to say this is 2021. I'm going to say 2016. My daughter had gotten married, and her husband was in medical school, and he had to come to Memphis for medical school. They got married. They met at Knoxville. She went to UT in Knoxville. He went to UT. They met there. She was in a sorority. He was in a fraternity that would do these events together, and they met, fell in love, got married. She graduated. She started teaching kindergarten, and he was still in school. He did 5 years there, where she did 4 years. She graduated with a teaching degree. He graduated with a 5-year engineering degree in computer science, which and it was a full ride, by the way. He's very, very smart. So that's, you know,
Nice.
it's not easy to do.
Yeah,
And very, very smart. So he went on to do medical school after they got married. They moved to Memphis.
I see.
And so, because the UT medical school is here in Memphis. So they stayed here 2 years. So prior to that, I was always a tourist coming here. You know, we come here and hit the hot spots. We go to Graceland, go to Sun Studios, and just do the basics. So after that, I found myself here about once a month. Her and my daughter go shopping, son-in-law studying for
I
medical school.
see. I see.
And I had my camera, my drone, and my
I
truck.
see.
And
Hey.
one Saturday, I went, you know what? I'm going to ride over there to Graceland. And I kind of stayed away from it, just being honest. I don't know why.
Right.
But I knew that I could make Elvis videos and
Yeah.
put them on YouTube, and I'd probably get hits. But I kind of, for whatever reason, mentally, I just went, I don't think I want to do that.
No.
But I finally broke down and went, you know what? I'm going to ride over there. Because I wondered, what I did that day was I said, you know, what's past Graceland? I'd never driven past it. There's
Right,
Days Inn there. I've really
right,
never been
right.
down that
Yeah,
road by
yeah,
past the Days Inn.
yeah.
What's down there?
Yeah.
You know? what's behind it?
Yeah,
I'd driven
yeah,
down
yeah.
where Vernon's house was. I
Vernon
knew where
right
it was on
behind him.
Dolan, but
Oh,
I never really ventured any
yeah,
further than that. So that day I rode down there. I went down to Southland Mall and kind of looked, and I thought, I know Elvis was through here. What's behind this? I drove back there and looked, and I saw Vernon's house. And I remember driving by. I passed by it. I was heading back towards Elvis Presley Boulevard, and I saw it on my right, and I thought, I bet you a lot of people don't know that house is there.
hey,
So I threw it in reverse, and I backed up, and I parked, and I got out, and I flew the drone over it first.
very cool. I
And
saw
then
that
you
episode.
saw
Yes,
the very first episode, other than I did a Tupelo episode
you're kidding
a
me.
couple of years before that, kind of being funny.
Oh,
And that
wow.
episode, people have actually gotten mad with me because I jumped the ropes in the Tupelo house and kind of
Oh,
did some
wow.
things I
Yeah,
shouldn't have
yeah,
done. But
yeah.
I just thought it was comical, so
Okay.
I did that.
So
And that
that-
was actually prior.
Okay, but Vernon's really
Vernon's house
was
was the first
episode
episode.
1. Yeah.
Right. So what
Wow.
I did was I filmed it, got my camera, got out, and just kind of told the story, and went back, edited it, put it on the channel, and I got 30,000 views the first month. So I went, okay, I'm on to something here.
Hey,
So then I started going, okay, well, what's my next story?
yeah.
So I remember seeing that picture of Elvis at Madison Cadillac walking through the parking lot
Parking
with
lot,
the
yeah.
jumpsuit on.
Yeah,
And
with
I thought,
Linda.
what in the world is
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm going to go find where this picture happened at. Well,
Yeah.
so I go over to Madison Cadillac, and sure enough, there
Yeah,
it is where
yeah,
it happened. So I told that story, speculated on why I thought he was wearing a jumpsuit. Turns out I was wrong.
Okay.
I speculated that because on that date that he was there, he was doing a show in Johnson City. And so I speculated that maybe they were there changing cars or whatever,
Right.
which logistically doesn't make sense because the airport is right by Graceland. Madison's all the way in town.
I
So
see.
it didn't make sense
Yeah.
logistically, but I didn't know.
Right,
I was,
right.
pure speculation. Later, I got to ask 3 people that were in that photograph
Yeah.
what that was about.
What did they say?
They said that Elvis was going to give Cadillacs away that day, and he thought, to him, that was Elvis. That wasn't a stage thing. If you expect to see Elvis, him wearing a jumpsuit's perfectly normal. And so that seems crazy to me.
It does seem
but
crazy to me.
It seemed perfectly normal to him, which he's Elvis. So,
But street clothes. What,
well, he was wearing. But if you look,
that's
he's wearing house
costume.
shoes and a costume. But to him, that was Elvis.
Oh,
So they expected him to be Elvis. He was going to go give Cadillacs away that day, and by God, he did. So my block list is probably 3,000 or 4,000 long.
Is it? Yeah.
Because some Elvis fans don't know how to act. So
yeah.
when they start getting mouthy and saying things that are out of the way, I simply just block them instead of tolerating them. And I think it makes it, I hate it for them, but it makes, I have to protect my mental health.
Right.
I also have to protect the mental health of the people that watch my videos.
Yeah.
And I think it makes I started that.
There are a lot of nuts out there,
Oh, and
there's a lot of
gonna hate.
yeah, and it's interesting. Well, I mean, it goes back to the beginning with the music.
Yeah.
Well, we can go back that
Yeah.
far with Elvis, I guess,
Yeah.
and haters, and but also the drugs. Once the drugs came out.
Yeah.
With Elvis, what happened? Then that brought a whole new wave into that.
Yeah.
But
and people still have the wrong idea about the drugs.
They-
Elvis wasn't doing intravenous drugs off the
yeah,
street.
yeah,
He was only doing things that were prescribed to him by a doctor. And now I will say that when Dr. Nick would cut things off, because see, the other thing you got to understand is, or got to consider, is Dr. Nick didn't come into the picture until 1967. Prior to 1967, Elvis was on uppers and all that stuff in the Army.
yeah.
Elizabeth told me that when she came here in March of 1960, she came back with Elvis from Germany on the airplane. She came with Vernon and Grandma, and it was Vernon, Grandma, and Elizabeth. She said that Elvis was getting jars of pills from the base apothecary or pharmacy,
Right,
if you will.
right.
He would buy jars at $100 a jar.
Yeah.
So when she came back from Germany with him, she put the jars in her suitcases.
Now,
She brought them back.
were they legal? What was it, Benzedrine? Or
Yeah, it'd be bennies what we would call uppers, and
uppers?
probably
Yeah,
lowers,
yeah.
because he had studied. If you watch the video with Dr. Black, he had studied. He had studied the
knew the
physician's
effect.
journal enough to know about drugs to be able to point out. He had a glass jar full of old pills, and Elvis was able to name them.
Yeah,
He knew that much about them. He had studied
up at the pharmacy where he'd pick up his pills.
He wasn't ignorant to these things.
Yeah.
And what was happening is, and I may be saying some things I shouldn't say here, but Dean, I know Dean very well. I'm good friends with Dean, so we have a lot of off-camera conversations. And he is a little bit upset that his dad got treated the way he was treated by a lot of friends, because they for whatever reason feel like Dr. Nick killed Elvis. So Elvis was Elvis. Elvis was going to have whatever Elvis wanted, whenever Elvis wanted it, no matter what anybody said. And so, but you could see, if you look at the history, Dr. Nick was trying to get Elvis to exercise by getting him to play racquetball. They were trying to get him an exercise machine that day. That's not something somebody would make up.
Right.
They were concerned with his health.
Yeah.
They were intercepting packages when he would not give Elvis stuff.
Yeah.
Elvis had Dr. Ghana.
Right.
He had the dude in L.A.
Yeah.
And they were intercept packages coming in the mail to Elvis. Yeah. So Elvis was going to have what Elvis wanted.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Right.
You can't save somebody from their self.
Right.
And look, I think everybody in their life, and this may or may not be true, but it's true for me. I think everybody. Some people are more addictive. They have more of an addictive personality than others. I have an addictive personality, not for drugs, not for alcohol, for food.
Oh,
man, I'll binge on stuff. And I'm like Elvis in a lot of ways with food. If I like something, I'll eat nothing but that. Until I can't stand it anymore. Which is not healthy and not smart. And I know that I shouldn't do it, but guess what? I still do it. So he had gotten to a point in his life where, I mean, being Elvis had to be overwhelming. I'm the spa guy with 72,000 subscribers. I'm like a drop in the ocean of his fame. And that could be, and it's a little overwhelming sometimes when I'm looking at my phone and I have so many messages and I want to try to be fair to people. And give everybody time and all that. But it's overwhelming for me. I'm like that. So if you consider the level of fame that he was, that he couldn't literally walk out his door without a mob happening, that it had to be mentally draining for him. I can't imagine what it was like from a physical standpoint. So I understand him trying to escape somewhat, and I don't, and my take on this whole thing. That's why I get rid of haters. Now's not the time to hate. Now's the time. Let's talk about the history. Let's talk about what really happened. And let's embrace everybody in the story, good or bad. Whatever you think about it, good or bad. None of us were there, so none of us really know. So there's some people that when we decided we would have Dave Hebler here, well, he wrote that terrible book. What? I wasn't there. This guy did what he thought was right at that moment. He made a decision. Now, whether the decision was right or wrong, he made that decision. He went, and he was only 20% of that deal, where Red and Sonny were 80% of that deal. But irregardless, I'm not going to judge him on his choice because he's the one that lived that.
And if you read that book, there is love. Throughout that entire book.
That Red and Sonny and Dave Hebler loved Elvis Presley. I absolutely.
And do you think they wrote that book because they loved Elvis Presley? I think they were too.
Because we've just substantiated that Elvis was going to do what Elvis was going to do no matter what. And I think maybe they felt like they could see his health declining, and they felt like maybe they needed to do a wake-up call. Now, whether it was embarrassing to Elvis, being a drug addict can be embarrassing. Being called on your addiction can be embarrassing.
That ain't fun.
But sometimes that's the best thing.
They call it intervention today.
Right. Well, it's a biblical principle.
Oh, is it?
It's absolutely a biblical principle. If I listen to the Rick and Bubba show out of Alabama, and Rick Burgess, he's not my pastor, but I consider him a pastor-like figure to me. My pastor is, I go to Three Oaks Church in Gallatin, Tennessee, and my pastor I have a real pastor, but I consider Rick Burgess my pastor. And Rick said something one time that I thought was very, very interesting. And that was that when he was going to get married, when he went to his pastor, who he considered his pastor of his church, and said, I want to marry my wife. And it was actually, I believe it was her pastor. And when he talked to this guy, he said, so, you're going to enter into this marriage covenant, and so you consider yourself a Christian. And he said, yeah, I'm a Christian. He said, well, I know you, and I can't tell you are. And he said that was a wake-up call for him. He went, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So he found out that he was a cultural Christian. He thought he was a Christian, but he wasn't doing things that Christians do.
I see.
So that was a wake-up call for him. And so he turned his life around, and now he actually is a public speaker and a pastor for millions of people. He saved people's lives. And I believe that.
Right.
So the same thing in Elvis's, if he had never done that for Rick Burgess, he would have never turned his life around, and he would have gone through the rest of his life being a cultural Christian, right? So, and possibly when the time came and he's called to die, he may not have gone to heaven, but somebody loved him enough to go, hey, look, I know you say you're a Christian, but I know you. You're not. So sometimes you need somebody to go, you know what?
This is what you look like.
I know what you say, but you're not living. But see, the way Elvis was is if you said that to him when you worked for him, you got fired.
Right.
These guys were fired. They had nothing to lose. They weren't. They didn't have access to him to say it to him.
Right.
So I believe that it was they believed that they were going to try to save us.
I think you're right. I really think you're right.
But I don't fault them either way. I wasn't there. It's not my purpose to judge. I'm going to judge for myself, but I'm not going to make a video and go, hey, these guys are terrible. I'm going to tell you what I know about it, and then you determine. But this is not a time to start culling history and not doing things because we don't like somebody or whatever. Right. And Ginger would be another thing. A lot of people hate Ginger. It's funny in the
What's the hate on her
They love to hate Ginger. They love to hate Red. They love to hate Sonny. They love to hate Dave. They love to hate the Colonel. They love to hate.
Why Ginger?
Well, because they think that she should have been awake when he died. And there's a lot of pluses and minuses there. So I'm not. I have my own opinions about that story.
Elvis didn't die of a drug overdose.
No, he didn't.
No.
But that's what I'm saying. But the average person, if you ask them, they think that he died from a drug overdose. They think he was doing intravenous street drugs, which is not accurate at all.
He had a heart problem.
Yeah.
His dad just got out of the hospital from a heart problem. Yeah. His mother died, didn't she?
She died from cirrhosis.
Okay, she was like 32.
She was 46.
Okay.
And that's another myth, is they always say she died at 42, which is not accurate.
But
she died August 14th.
Yeah, but there's early death.
Yeah.
Destined to die.
Destined to die young, Sally Hodell. She makes a case, and I happen to believe her case.
I buy it too.
That Elvis had some hereditary issues that he was not going to live long no matter what.
Exactly right.
And the drug abuse did not help.
Yeah.
But she makes a case that he needed those drugs to be Elvis.
Yeah.
He had so many geriatric issues. There are 11 major systems in your body. He had disease in 9 of those.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
So he needed that to actually function as a person.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that are on. I know people that are taking 30 pills a day.
Yeah.
There are other people out there that do that, and that's no different than what he was doing.
She makes a very good point.
She does. Sally's very, very
and
smart.
you don't hear about that anymore. You know,
Yeah.
they just think he has a needle in his arm.
Yeah, but it's not accurate at all. It's not fair to his legacy.
Yeah. Well, to your legacy, Spa Guy, I must say,
Yeah.
I love this
Oh,
dojo,
man, I appreciate
and
it.
I think it's good, and I love your channel.
Well, I appreciate
And I
it.
just hope you keep and digging up the truth on Elvis
We're
and
learning.
getting rid of the myths and
Yes.
you know, and
And new stuff, believe it or
just
not,
keep
pops
on
up
keeping on.
all the time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
I can't believe it, but a lot of people know a lot of things. So
Yeah.
new things pop up. We have Elvis's financials for 5 years. We have so I know how much he made. I know how much he paid for costumes, what his phone bills were for 5 years. We have the financials from him buying the airplanes.
Yeah, it's a shame that he had to die.
Yeah.
For a lot of this stuff to get out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because I was mentioning the other day on one of my vlogs here how the real movie that the director wanted from That's the Way It Is had to come out after his death because the Colonel saw it and told him to cut it or he'd never work in Hollywood again.
Yeah.
And so you get that crap from MGM. I don't know if you saw that original. That's the Way It Is. It's awful. It's just Elvis on stage singing 12 songs saying goodnight.
Yeah.
But you see the director's cut that he wanted to put out. That was Elvis in Las Vegas.
That was the real Elvis.
Yeah, that was the real Elvis.
It's interesting, all the stuff. And, you know, I same way with the Colonel. I'm a fan of the Colonel. Did he make some mistakes? Of course he did.
Yeah.
He managed Elvis a long time. You're going to make mistakes doing stuff.
But there was so many. They were so tight. With marketing and stuff.
You have to judge somebody by their body of work. You can't.
Right. I know.
And if you look at the Colonel's body of work, I believe no Colonel, no Elvis.
Yeah.
I think, and as great as Elvis was, I think it took those two people together to create this phenomenon that we're talking about 44 years after his death.
Yeah, and they worked on it together, didn't they? Yeah.
The Colonel is the one that in 1956 got him on all those TV shows that made him the largest star in the world.
Yeah.
That's a fact. That year was the year that he became a millionaire in 1956. And technically, the Colonel really didn't become his manager until March, I believe March the 28th of 56 was when he technically became the manager. So if you look at from the time, so he became his manager in March of 56 at the end of it. I think it was the 28th. I'm going from memory. June, he inked a deal to do Elvis merch. From June to December of 1956, they sold $26 million in Elvis merch. $26 million.
Yeah. Now,
if somebody sold $26 million in merch today, we would be talking about it. That was in 1956.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, the Colonel was a connection to RCA and to Heartbreak Hotel too.
Well, yes and no. So the way the connection to RCA was multifaceted. The Colonel's connection to Heartbreak Hotel was through Mae Axton, which is Hoyt Axton's mother.
Right.
She worked with the Colonel in Florida on concerts, so they knew each other.
Right.
And what happened was she was wanting to come to Nashville. She wanted to be a part of the music scene in Nashville. And basically, from what I gather, is that she was told, your in is to write songs. If you could write songs, then we can get you in. So the very first side on Elvis was Mae Axton.
Right.
And Elvis met Mae now I think he probably knew her before, but he met Mae in Nashville in a hotel. I believe it was the Hermitage Hotel. I may be wrong. It's gone now. Whichever hotel it was, it's where T-Pack is in Nashville, where the building was. And she played him the demo for Heartbreak Hotel that was recorded in her house in Jacksonville, Florida. And I've shown you the house in Jacksonville, which if you listen to it, sounds very much like what Elvis cut. It's very, very similar. And that was his first recording at RCA, which became a major
Right.
hit,
And then
and still
made
well
him
known
national,
today.
got him out of the South.
Absolutely.
You
And
know.
today it's still a very famous song.
Yeah.
Everybody knows
Yeah.
Heartbreak
Yeah.
Hotel. So that was a piece of magic, but that was part of the story. When I was filming with the guy, when we got done, the son actually worked here most of the time. His father and son.
Yeah.
And the father, I talked to him on the phone because he found out what we filmed and all that, and he mentioned that they were thinking of retiring at some point. And so I said, so does that mean that you're going to sell the building? He said, probably. And I said, well, when that day comes, you call me first. So he called me in about November or October of 2019 and said it's for sale.
Hey.
And that's when we started. We didn't really put anything together till really February of 2020.
Yeah.
And but by then we were able, that gave him a chance to see if other people were going to buy it, which other people were trying to buy it, but they wouldn't have done this with it. They were going to turn it into these different businesses, And so it's just, I think the Lord lined it up. It was just meant to be.
It's fantastic, I must say. With what you have here and what is ahead, it seems. It looks like you're getting donations from fans here. Are they're loaning out?
Yeah, we're getting fans are putting
very
in
impressive
from private collections. This is for the fans by the fans.
Yeah, I know.
So this is from a private collection. This is a lady that lives in Washington D.C. and you can see she's got a very impressive,
very nice
collection. And this was actually Ronnie McDowell helped me with this as well. Ronnie McDowell's girlfriend and his merch manager.
Ronnie McDowell, the songwriter,
the singer and songwriter.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And Ronnie, Lisa. This lady's name's Lisa, and she lives in Washington, D.C. She brought these to see Ronnie in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, which is north of where I live. Ronnie lives where I live, and he's a good friend. And she brought this stuff from Washington, D.C. So Ronnie put it in his tour bus, and they brought it here to us. So they shuttled it for us.
See.
So if it wasn't for Ronnie's girlfriend and Ronnie and his merch manager, we wouldn't have this stuff. I would have had to go get it.
Very nice.
So they were
it's a costume store. Is an enterprise they have?
Tell me again.
It seemed some of them say they are. The shirts they say are from the costume store.
Yeah, but those are real Elvis shirts.
Yeah,
we would have just purchased that brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have other things. Tennessee Ted is in some of the videos. We call him the mayor of Graceland. So what I did was when I knew we were going to do this,
his collection's very nice.
I knew that I didn't have enough stuff personally.
Yeah.
Pat didn't have enough stuff personally to do a museum.
Right.
So what I did was called friends.
There you
I
go.
called Tennessee Ted. I called Larry Moss. I called Bob Foley, which Bob doesn't have anything in here yet, but he's going to. I called Joey Smith, and I wasn't even planning on Joey and them being a part of this. With it in the way that
they have a nice collection.
Oh, I think
so. Yeah.
What we were planning on doing is I called Joey and Dakota because I knew that they had a background in MMA fighting and karate. And I said, hey, it would be cool if you guys could do lessons here.
Right.
So he still didn't really understand what this was. When I finally got him here to see this, he was like, oh, okay. I see what you're doing here. So we want to be a part of this. So that's kind of how that happened.
That's really cool.
And so we got them apart. So they've got stuff in the cabinet. We have stuff, so I've reached out to Con Reese family because this was his dojo.
Right.
And you see the Con Reese family, they put
very
stuff in
impressive.
Here. So this honors Con Reese.
Yeah.
He's the creator of Pasaru Karate, which what happened was Ed Parker was out in California. And in the 60s, Elvis was practicing with Ed Parker. Well, after the movie era, Elvis wasn't really going to LA very much.
Was the Ed Parker studio in Pasadena?
I think so.
Yeah, I saw it when I.
Yeah, and so his studio, that's where Elvis would practice on that thing. And they're getting ready to tear that down and build apartment buildings or something.
That doesn't surprise me.
And so what's going to happen is, or what happened was, he was getting Ed to come here.
I see.
Which is not reasonable to do karate lessons. And Ed finally said, you've got Master Ree right there in Memphis. So I would recommend that you go to Master Ree and let him be a part of, and start studying with him. So that's how that came about.
That's connection.
So he studied with Master Ree from about 70 to 74. He got his 7th and 8th degree black belt in this room.
Yeah.
Where that blue star is at, you see him get his 8th degree black belt. Or the 8th Dan is what they call that. Or the 8th Dan, actually. And so what happened is during that time, Elvis and Bill Wallace, which Bill taught lessons here. Superfoot is
Right.
Bill Wallace. So Elvis and Bill Wallace and Red West decided that they were going to open a dojo in Midtown, which is when you watch the videos of Elvis going upstairs, that's Midtown.
I
That's
see.
TKI, Tennessee
Okay.
Karate Institute.
Right.
So Elvis was planning on doing TKI. So after the end of 74, Congaree moved out of here because Elvis was no longer studying here. He had started his own dojo.
Right.
So when you watch the movie or the footage for the New American Gladiators, you see them in this dojo, and then the same day they go over to TKI.
I see.
So
I see.
the way you can tell that is Red West is wearing the same outfit at both places.
Yeah.
And he's not wearing a gi; he's wearing street clothes. You know, a lot of polyester. And but that's what happened. And so after that, they practiced over there. Now that's Patrick Wren's dojo. That's an active dojo right now. And Patrick and I are going to team up where we're going to make it where you can buy a ticket here and do both dojos. Buy a ticket
very
there
cool.
and do both
Oh,
dojos.
very cool. Yeah.
That way we're cross promoting.
Right.
Because a lot of people know that's there and don't know this is here, or they know this is here and don't know that's
Yeah,
there.
I recognize the Kangaree name.
Right.
I don't. That's
Right.
new to me
And
today.
there's actually a
Just-
third dojo.
Okay.
The third dojo is 1911 Poplar, which Congaree's family still owns. And that is no longer a dojo, that's a bar, but that's how Congaree's wife, that's her revenue is from that building.
I
if you
see.
will.
I see.
So that's a way that she makes a living.
Yeah. No.
But they still own that. He got that building in 1966. We have the business license for it back here in the case.
Very
when
cool.
He opened the very first dojo.
Very cool.
So he opened his first dojo in 66. Elvis started practicing with him in 70 to 74. So there's really 3 dojos, and you'll see photos of Elvis and Congaree and even Priscilla in that dojo. But there's not really much else. There's a handful of photos in that dojo. Most people are more familiar with this one in TKI.
What was the idea with American Gladiator? He wanted to make a movie about karate?
He wanted to make a movie about karate and get people fired up about karate like he was fired up
I
about
see,
karate.
I
He
see.
had a passion for it. So he wanted other people to enjoy the same passion that he had for it.
I see.
But he also looked at karate as a Christian thing, as a religious thing. So if you watch him in the videos, you'll see them in here praying as part of the
So it
karate
was
experience.
spiritual too,
It was a spiritual
as
thing.
mind and body kind of
Exactly.
thing.
And if you listen to or read about, you could read about what his vision for the New American Gladiators movie was. The very last scene that he described that was going to be in the movie was going to be a man in a karate gi doing karate moves on top of a mountain, and them zooming into the man on top of the mountain as he was reciting the Lord's Prayer. And I would assume that man would have been him.
I see.
Of course, that scene never happened because sadly, after 75, his health really declined.
Yeah.
He set aside $125,000 for this movie. You can find those documents out there where he had planned on doing it. And the footage was eventually turned into a documentary type film, not really what he had in mind.
Okay.
And you can find that out there. It's actually
I just saw clips of it.
it was actually narrated by Wayne Carman. We call him Karate Wayne. And they had Wayne, because Wayne's in those videos.
Yeah.
If you see him, he was in the dojo as well. But it was narrated by Wayne. But it really wasn't done the way Elvis was wanting it done. It was done more as a documentary.
Right.
They
After
released it.
Elvis's death?
Oh,
or-
yes. Yeah. Way after Elvis's passing.
I see.
Way after.
Yeah.
But he had a love